r/AskReddit. What was the dumbest rule your school enforced? My high school banned t-shirts that had the cover of Rush's album Signals, an album popular at the time, which features an image of a dog sniffing a fire hydrant. They considered it scatological because the dog was about to pee on it. This struck the entire student body as extremely stupid, and roughly 1/2 of the student body picked a day to wear the t-shirt. We won. Imagine how terrible it would be if kids found out that dogs pee. We weren't allowed to have cough drops in our elementary because the school considered them drugs. God help you if you had a headache. Oh, you need an aspirin? Well, you need to eat more fiber, because that's tough shit. This is still a thing. My daughter is lactose intolerant and she's not allowed to take Lactaid with lunch because it's a drug. Took all the doors off the men's room bathroom stalls because of vandalism for 2 months. Same at my school, but for all 4 years, we had no TP or mirrors either. No TP? What did you use then? If I had to poo, I'd walk home. I'm a cheerleader, and for school spirit week I wore the uniform they gave me. I got dress coded. That is the ultimate high school moment. Ultimate life moment TBH. They banned wristwatches. No one knows what the reason was. It's a gateway clock. Before you know it, people will start bringing pocket watches, then wall clocks, then grandfather clocks, and before you know it some kid walks in with Big Ben. Then what do? Our school banned hugging because it was erotic. As you can imagine, the boys at school started giving each other very sensual high fives for the rest of the year. I picture them moaning loudly while their hands were slowly gliding against the other for several seconds. Can't wear 2 men a matching shirts because you could be a gang. This was in regards to a kid with cancer wanting to make a bunch of shirts. My high school was in Butt Duck, Nebraska. American schools seem to be obsessed with the idea of gangs. No backpacks to class, but purses were allowed. Girls started carrying around purses big enough to be considered a backpack. Guys got pissed, started carrying purses too. We were all given these ugly planners at the beginning of the school year, with a few pages at the back filled with hall passes. If you didn't have your planner, or if all your boxes were filled, you weren't allowed to go to the bathroom. And no, you couldn't buy a new planner, or borrow one from your friend. The only excuse you had was if you had a doctor's note. But no doctor is going to give a note for an upset stomach caused by the school lunch. Oh wow, I totally forgot about this until you said this. We had those too. Some teachers gave extra credits to kids who never used any of their hall passes. I went to a school that had block scheduling, so our classes were 2 hours long. Pretty messed up that we were incentivized to never use the bathroom. Now that I think back on that. God, my middle school did too. You had a page of hall passes and I think you had like 6 for a quarter. You could use them to go to your bathroom or your locker if you forgot your homework or something. If you didn't use them you got extra credit. I think I used one once the whole time I was in middle school because I had forgotten my homework in my locker. I later developed Crohn's disease around age 17 and I am terrified to think what that would have been like in middle school pre-diagnosis and thus pre-doctor's note. No jackets. They think we may hide things like phones or bombs there. We had to wear belts. Someone snitched that people weren't wearing belts under their sweaters, and they actually checked and a bunch of people got detentions. Stupid. We had belt raids at my school where the dean would burst into classes, completely interrupting any education, to check that everyone was wearing a belt. We got to understand him though. How could you possibly learn anything without a belt on to retain the information? Attended all girls high school. You had to bring a male date to dances or not attend at all. No going solo or with your girlfriends. So backwards. Those sound like very empty dances. Sounds like a plot to get no one to show up so the school can just cancel dances entirely and not spend the money. We couldn't wear winter clothing, jackets, hats, gloves in class because they were gang symbols. This was a small farm town in Wisconsin. Besides obviously having no gangs, it was ducking cold, even indoors, in the winter, but clearly wearing warm clothing is something only gangs do. Mitten Clan ain't nothing to duck with. Also small town Wisconsin. We weren't able to wear jackets or anything like that in class either for literally the same reason. One kid came into class wearing snow boots and the teacher told him to put them back in his locker. So he came back with his farm boots that smelled like straight manure. You knew where he was for the rest of the day. Why was this such a Wisconsin thing? I still remember in middle school, when we laughed about how there were no gangs in school, the teacher said in high school there will be a lot of gangs. I believed them and was legit scared. You couldn't wear any kind of head items that were gang colors, red or blue. This included hairbands, scrunchies, beads in your hair, ribbons, anything. I got in trouble for wearing a blue hairband with white polka dots. Don't joke about the polka dot cartel. My high school mascot was Daniel Boone holding a musket. A kid wore a Guns N' Roses shirt to school and was told he had to change shirts because of the pistols on the shirt. He pointed out the hypocrisy of the school mascot and they changed everything. The mascot was switched to holding a flagpole instead. Every instance of the mascot was changed from the multiple signs outside and around the school to the giant picture in the middle of our basketball stadium. Holden, you're a ducking legend for this. They banned hats because hats can be used to signify gang colors. The only major crime group in our area was the Hells Angels and they certainly weren't having people wear hats for children to signify their allegiance. It was so bad a few years after I graduated I came back to volunteer as a chaperone for a school trip as a favor for my favorite teacher. The principal saw me wearing a beanie from across school. He literally sprinted half a mile to chase me down and tell me to take off the hat. When I told him I wasn't a student and didn't have follow the dress code, he said either take off the hat, leave, or he'd call the cops. It wasn't the actual day of the trip. Just had to show up to get the itinerary and stuff, so I just said, "Duck you, I'm out, idiots." I loved telling this one. We had percentage grades, and if you earned 100% in a class for the semester you would be dinged down to 99%, because only God is perfect. As far as I know this was not an official rule, and I only know of it happening one time, to the girl who eventually became our valedictorian. But that was the reasoning she was given. It was a Catholic girls' high school and there were a lot of other weird, strictly enforced rules, especially around the uniform. But the only God is perfect rule will always take the cake for me. You got in trouble if you wore just a Hanes white t-shirt after school because you were in your underwear. Might as well just wear your literal underwear to make a statement. No more than 5 friends could hang out together during lunch. Our HS principal was trying to crack down on gangs, but I never saw a single teacher enforce the rule. My school was like this. If too many people happened to be wearing the same color on the same day, administration would follow them around. My buddies and I are a bunch of Mormon guys from Utah. Would have been a pretty lame gang. My school banned backpacks at one point. To protest, boys just didn't bring anything with them to class and girl brought really big purses. The $200 blazer was compulsory and we got detention every single day until we got it. No rubbing linseed oil into the school cormorant. This is the quality word salad I need right now. No bits. If we spoke our native language instead of English, we had to pay a fine of about 30 to 40 cents. Zero tolerance to bullying. The faculty were the worst ones. Too many double standards. They had no problem enforcing it when a student was doing the bullying but did absolutely nothing to punish the teachers when they did it. They banned dodgeball. School added thumbprint scanners at gates of school which counted as registration. Needless to say, I would just walk to school, scan my thumb and walk back home with them none the wiser. It was a great few months until they noticed. Girls can't show your shoulders or above the fingertips with your hands straight against your legs. Boys could wear tank tops with holes in them and basketball shorts. Girls were sent home if their damn shirt had a neck hole too big. School I went to once had a policy against any drinks that weren't water. Granted, I love me some water, but it sucks not to be able to have a nice Gatorade or something in school once in a while. Well, until I just bought a metal water bottle and circumvented that rule pretty quickly. We weren't allowed to play tag football at lunch, only frisbee. When I asked the principal what the difference was, he responded with a sarcastic tone, "A football is round and a frisbee is a flat disc." He left the school later that year, went to another school, and a few years later was brought up on charges for failing to report the abuse of a student by a teacher. Zero tolerance policy. Most zero tolerance policies for anything in a school don't work because the teachers that enforce the hell out of them don't understand the situation. Then when you try to explain, you get interrupted before you say your first syllable. Middle school had banned salt and pepper from being used in the cafeteria, claimed it was too unhealthy, still sold Mountain Dew in the vending machines. School I used to teach at had similar rules, some bullshit about federal nutrition standards or something. We'd just keep them in the teacher's lounge along with hot sauces and chamoy and a few other condiments and leave them on our desks. In my freshman year of high school we had a terrible vandalism problem. The bathrooms would be broken in various ways almost constantly. In a stroke of pure genius, the staff decided that any bathroom that was vandalized would be closed for the week on first offense, to the quarter for second, and permanently on the third offense. They took back the rule after closing every bathroom on day 1. Holy shit, recently at my high school someone stole a ducking urinal. I have no clue how someone manages to do that. That takes some Ocean's 11 level planning right there. In 6th grade they switched out all student chairs for large rubber stability balls. There was a strict no bouncing rule. It was a disaster. Edit. This was in Arizona in the late 90s for those asking. The idea was to promote better posture. This wouldn't work with any age group, let alone 6th graders. Prom was a mandatory lockdown for the night in order to avoid students going to parties after prom. Prom was held at various house parties across town instead. I hated when schools shove their noses into everyone else's business. Shoes are to be worn as the manufacturer intended. I have no clue who was wearing their shoes incorrectly, or how, but this line, verbatim, was repeated to us over the morning announcements when there were perceived infractions at various points throughout the year. Maybe people were drawing on their shoes? I did that, and I feel like that's the point of having cons.